Hello friends, welcome to a session of nervous system. Today's topic of discussion is cerebrovascular diseases. It includes one of the most devastating diseases which has very high mortality and high morbidity. So it includes ischemic stroke and hemorrhagic stroke. This is very vast topic, so we will discuss it in 2 or 3 sessions. Today we will discuss what is ischemic stroke, or we will discuss what is TIA, or what is lacunar infarcts. We will discuss hemorrhagic stroke in separate session and all brain syndromes like Points syndrome, medullary syndromes, lateral medullary syndromes. So what are the features of when patient is having infarct on dominant hemisphere, or what are the clinical features or clinical syndrome when patient is having non-dominant hemisphere. In today's session we will see what is ischemic stroke. So it includes cerebral ischemia, infarction and TIA. So cerebral ischemia is, you can say, when there is reduction of blood flow to the brain for few seconds, and it most of the time it reverses spontaneously. And if that reduction in blood remains there for minutes, so it will convert from ischemia to infarct. And in some cases those infarct even can thrombolize automatically, and patient develop spontaneously with no signs and symptoms of neurological deficit. And if it occurs within 24 hours, it is called as a transient ischemic attack. So we have 3 parts: cerebral ischemia, cerebral infarction and TIA. And we can say it as a cerebral infarct even though all neurological signs and symptoms recovered, but after 24 hours. So before 24 hours you can label it as a TIA, but after 24 hours it will remain as a cerebral infarct, that is stroke. Causes include thrombosis, embolic occlusion. The formation of thrombus is not in the specific artery. That thrombus is formed in areas like heart or arteries like carotid. So artery to artery embolization or cardioembolization. Patient of hypercoagulable disorder may develop stroke, and even of venous sinus thrombosis and vasculitis. So as I told you, in embolic stroke, we have a cardioembolic stroke, and the commonest cause of cardioembolic stroke are non-rheumatic causes. And non-rheumatic means the cause is not because of rheumatic heart disease, that is mitral stenosis or mitral regurgitation. Even those patients who are having rheumatic heart disease are prone to develop embolic infarct. So that is rheumatic valvular disease, which will lead to atrial fibrillation, and non-rheumatic atrial fibrillation. It may be because of myocardial infarction or ischemic cardiomyopathy. Other causes includes prosthetic valves. So non-rheumatic atrial fibrillation, this is the commonest cause, followed by rheumatic heart disease causing atrial fibrillation. Other causes like myocardial infarction, the thrombus may form in apex of ventricle, which will lodge and will lead to stroke. And even patients who are having patent foramen oval, so the thrombus which is formed in lower limbs will travel through superior inferior vena cava to right atrium, to left atrium, to left ventricle and to brain. And even patients who are having atrial septal defect, who are having ventricular septal defect, those patients are at risk of developing stroke. And as I told you, the non-rheumatic atrial fibrillation is the most common cause of cerebral embolism. So if question is there, what is the commonest cause for embolic stroke, cerebral embolic stroke, your answer should be non-rheumatic atrial fibrillation. And this non-rheumatic atrial fibrillation has importance while treating, as this patient may require anticoagulant with warfarin or heparin or Clexane or enoxaparin, depending on what is charge to score. We will discuss this charge to score later on. Second commonest cause of embolic stroke is artery to artery stroke, artery to artery emboli. And the commonest site of formation of this embolus is carotid bifurcation. So carotid bifurcation atherosclerosis is the most common source for artery to artery embolic stroke. This is again can be asked in your exam. Coming to next point, which is important for your MCQ, that is ischemic penumbra. So ischemic penumbra is a tissue surrounding the core region of infarction, which is ischemic but which is reversible dysfunction. Regarding ischemic penumbra, if you thrombolize that patient on time, that penumbra you can save within 3 to 4.5 hours. So it's a reversible dysfunctional area that is called as a ischemic penumbra. So coming to a small vessel stroke, which is also called as a lacunar infarction. And it is an infarction following atherothrombotic or lipohyalinotic occlusion of small arteries. The diameter will be ranging from 30 to 300 micrometer in the brain. So you can be asked two MCQs here. First MCQ is the occlusion is of lipohyalinotic type and the diameter of small arteries ranges between 30 to 300 micrometer. So this can be asked as MCQ. So these 2 points are important. And we have four types of small vessel stroke. That is pure motor hemiparesis, pure sensory stroke, ataxic hemiparesis, and dysarthria and clumsy hand or arm syndrome. So in pure motor hemiparesis, there will be an involvement of posterior limb of internal capsule. In pure sensory stroke, as you know, the major part of brain which controls sensation is a thalamus. So the involvement of ventral thalamus will lead to pure sensory stroke. Involvement of ventral pons and internal capsule will lead to ataxic hemiparesis. And involvement of ventral pons or genu of internal capsule will lead to dysarthria and clumsy hand or arm syndrome. So this was regarding a small vessel stroke. Coming to what is transient ischemic attack. Transient ischemic attack. As I told you, if the symptoms of stroke, that is neurodeficit, improves within 24 hours, all the signs and symptoms of stroke improved within 24 hours, you can label it as a transient ischemic attack, that is TIA. For MCQ point of view, you need to remember what is amaurosis fugax. So amaurosis fugax is a transient monoocular blindness, and it indicates there must be some stenosis in the carotid, which will lead emboli to central retinal artery and will lead to a monoocular blindness. So amaurosis fugax is important point, and this TIA should be evaluated urgently and you should treat it like a stroke. So if patient presents with TIA, you may start investigating what is the cause of that TIA. Even you may admit that patient because the patient who are having TIA are at risk of developing stroke, and if that patient is in a hospital when he develops stroke, you can thrombolize that patient. So this TIA patient should be taken seriously. Coming to a treatment of acute ischemic stroke. So treatment of acute ischemic stroke includes intravenous thrombolysis, antithrombotic treatment. Intravenous thrombolysis, we have option of RTPA. Antithrombotic treatment, that is whether to give antiplatelets. Endovascular techniques for carotid atherosclerosis and intra-arterial thrombolysis. Medical support, as these patients are bedridden, so these patients are at risk of developing pneumonia or nosocomial infection or DVT. So you should also take care of those patients to prevent deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolism. We will see what is the role of neuroprotection, and even the part of rehabilitation is very important in treating this ischemic stroke. Coming to intravenous thrombolysis, so the drug of choice for intravenous thrombolysis is RTPA, that is recombinant tissue plasmin activator. So most of the students compare stroke with myocardial infarction, and they may mislead that the drugs like streptokinase or tenecteplase may be effective in stroke. But you should remember that streptokinase, tenecteplase or urokinase are not effective or not indicated in stroke, because all these 3 or 4 drugs has a high chances of developing bleed, and which will be devastating. So the drug of choice is RTPA, that is recombinant tissue plasminogen activator, and the dose is 0.9 milligram per kg, and you can give it up to 90 milligram maximum, and 10% give it bolus, and remaining 90% you can give it infusion over a period of 60 minutes. You need to give this RTPA to patient who is presenting to you within 3 hours. Some physician also wants to give that thrombolysis when patient presents within 4.5 hours. So extended time. So within 3 hours of onset, you can give RTPA, and some consider 4.5 hours as a window period. So what is the indication of this RTPA? Clinical diagnosis of stroke, yes, he should present in window period, that is maximum up to 4.5 hours. CT scan, so you should prescribe CT scan immediately. You need to rule out hemorrhage. So hemorrhage, in hemorrhagic stroke, you cannot give RTPA. Age should be more than 18 years, and you need to take consent from a patient or his surrogate. Contraindication: high blood pressure, that is more than 185 systolic and 110 diastolic. Even if you give treatment with the help of labetalol, if the blood pressure remain more than 185 by 110, there is a contraindication for giving RTPA, because these patients are at risk of developing intracranial bleed. The other contraindications are when the platelet count is less than 1 lakh, when hematocrit is less than 25%, when glucose is less than 50 or more than 400. It's a contraindication for RTPA, because less than 40, that is hypoglycemia, may present as a stroke, and even patients who are having sugar more than 400 can present like a stroke. So these are the contraindication, and these patients are at a high risk of developing IC bleed. Prolonged PTT and PTINR. Improving symptoms. So if patient is a patient of ischemic stroke, start improving rapidly, so you may need not give RTPA. So improving symptoms are contraindications for giving RTPA. Even other contraindications are prior stroke or head injury within 3 months, major surgery in last 14 days, GI bleed in last 21 days, and recent myocardial infarction. So this was regarding RTPA. What is the role of aspirin or what is the role of antithrombotic treatment? The antiplatelet which is recommended for acute treatment of stroke is the treatment should be given through aspirin. So the drug of choice is aspirin. There is no role of clopidogrel or dipyridamole in acute case of stroke. There are trials which have shown that if you give aspirin within 48 hours of stroke, the outcomes are better than a control group. Regarding anticoagulation, other than patients who are having non-valvular atrial fibrillation, there is no any definite indication for giving anticoagulant, that is warfarin. But you can give warfarin to a patient, or you can give heparin, enoxaparin to a patient who has atrial fibrillation, and you can use Charles 2 score. That is, so this Charles 2 scores stand for: C is for CCF if patient has a history of CCF, H if patient is having hypertension, you give 1 point to hypertension, 1 point for CCF. Age, if age is more than 75, give 1 point. If patient is diabetic, give 1 point. And if there is a past history of TIA or stroke, you need to give 2 points. So if this Charles 2 score in a patient of non-rheumatic atrial fibrillation, if the score is more than 1, so there is definite indication of giving anticoagulant, that is warfarin or even heparin. Initially you need to start with heparin, and then those patients may need warfarin after discharge. So this Charles 2 score is helpful for deciding whether to go for anticoagulation or not. Coming to a treatment of risk factor. So we can prevent stroke by treating modifiable risk factors. So we have two classification of risk factor, that is modifiable and non-modifiable. Non-modifiable, family history of stroke is a non-modifiable risk factor for stroke. Age, the increasing age is a risk factor for stroke. Modifiable risk factors are like diabetes, hypertension, smoking, hyperlipidemia, lipids. So these all are modifiable risk factors. And if you treat all these risk factors at appropriate time, we can prevent further episodes of stroke. Coming to statins, for secondary prevention, there is a definite role of statin, and you can give dose ranging from 20 to 40 milligram of statins for preventing strokes in all patients. Regarding role of aspirin as a secondary prevention, so there is a role of aspirin in acute presentation, and also there is a role of aspirin in preventing further episodes of stroke, and even it can act as a primary prevention or secondary prevention. So the aspirin is a drug of choice, and you can give dose of aspirin ranging from 50 to 325 milligram of aspirin, and there is no any significant difference in low dose and high dose patient. So preferably we should give aspirin in lower doses, considering the chances of gastrointestinal bleed. The combination of clopidogrel and aspirin, there is no definite recommendation for giving combination of clopidogrel and aspirin, but even in some scenario, physicians like to give this combination of clopidogrel and aspirin. The combination of dipyridamole and aspirin, yes, there is recommendation for giving dipyridamole and aspirin. So here you may ask various MCQs. So what is the role of statin, whether it is recommended or not, whether a combination of clopidogrel and aspirin is recommended and not, or even regarding charge to score. You can ask various MCQs like what is the score for giving anticoagulant. And anticoagulant therapy as a long term, as a secondary prophylaxis, preventing further episodes of stroke. Study says that there is no any definite use of long term vitamin K antagonist for preventing atherothrombotic stroke. So this is again a gray zone whether to go for anticoagulant or not. But I think patients who are who has atrial fibrillation and it's of non-rheumatic origin, those patients may need to give anticoagulant therapy. Coming to carotid revascularization. Other than atrial fibrillation, the preventable cause of stroke is a carotid stenosis. So if patient is having symptomatic carotid stenosis in the form of amaurosis fugax or some past history of TIA, those patients you need to select for carotid intervention. And the symptomatic patient, the stenosis may be ranging from 50 to 70 or 70 to 99%. And there is a role of surgeon to decide whether this patient should undergo carotid intervention or not. And it's a job of surgeon. And the role of rehabilitation. For rehabilitation of all these stroke patients, there are definite stroke center who do care all such patients. So we will see what is the general approach of a stroke patient. What you will do, what are the steps you will follow when a patient of stroke comes to you. So we will see it on the board. So how will you approach a patient of stroke? So clinically check whether patient is really having stroke or patient is having Torr's palsy or patient is having low glucose, that is hypoglycemia. Just prescribe imaging study, and the choice of imaging study is CT scan when you are planning for thrombolysis, because CT scan takes few minutes or few seconds to take the images where MRI can take few minutes. And for an emergency, when you are planning to give thrombolysis, the purpose of doing CT scan or scan is just to rule out bleed, and in bleed the choice of imaging will be CT scan. So after CT scan, you will see some patients are hemorrhagic and other are ischemic stroke or cerebral infarction. And if that patient presented to you within 3 hours and in some cases 4.5 hours, you can directly go for RTPA. And there should be a checklist of contraindication and indication of RTPA. You should not thrombolize a patient who is having high blood pressure, who has a recent history of GI bleed or some stroke, so hemorrhagic stroke. You should not thrombolize those patients. And after thrombolizing, you need to see what is the cause of that infarction. And as I told you, the two commonest causes are atrial fibrillation and carotid stenosis. So if patient is having atrial fibrillation, you can treat the primary cause with the help of anticoagulation. You can prevent stroke by treating severe carotid stenosis, and other causes may be treatable or may not be treatable. And if patient is having hemorrhage, so hemorrhage we will see it in separate session, but here we will see this hemorrhage may be subarachnoid hemorrhage or hypertensive. And third part is intracerebral hemorrhage, not of hypertensive etiology. So if patient is having subarachnoid hemorrhage, there is option of coiling or clipping. If the patient is having hypertensive bleed, there may be a role of surgery and control of blood pressure. So, and in all these patients, as I told you, this stroke patient has very high morbidity and mortality, and this patient remain bedridden. So problem like bed sores, pulmonary embolism or pneumonia should be taken care of. And in large infarct or in hemorrhagic patient, you may not give heparin or enoxaparin. There you may prescribe DVT stocking or calf compression pump. And even you need to take care of pneumonia, you need to take care of bed sores by prescribing airbed and changing position frequently. So it's a general approach for stroke. What should be your first stage when patients of stroke presents to you, and so that you need to treat ischemic stroke with the help of RTPA, and the outcome of RTPA is very good. And so I think this is a sufficient discussion regarding cerebrovascular accident. Thank you.